thousands of Iranians braved a snowstorm in Tehran to celebrate the 40th anniversary of the revolution that toppled a US-backed monarch. But on what they call Victory Day, the nation's leaders made clear the fight was far from over.
Our people will face difficulties in the future. Our people currently face difficulties in their daily lives. But by helping each other, we will put these difficulties behind us.
Much of Iran's economic pain has come at the hands of the US. Washington reimposed sanctions last year due to what it said were concerns over the country's weapons program. But Rouhani remained defiant.
We have not asked, and we will not ask, for permission for anyone to develop our missile capabilities. And we will build a wide range of missiles that include ground-to-air, air-to-air, land-to-sea, and ground-to-ground. We will continue along the path we have chosen, and we will develop our military power.
France, Germany, and the UK have set up a barter-based trading system that lets companies avoid US sanctions. But experts doubt the mechanism will gain traction over fears Washington may retaliate. The World Bank expects the Iranian economy to shrink by 3% this year. That's as its oil industry suffers under renewed US sanctions. Iran pumped out 2.7 million barrels of oil a day in January. That's down from 4 million after the 2015 nuclear deal allowed Iranian oil to flow back into world markets. And it's less than half its pre-revolution production. Before 1979, Iran was supplying 6 million barrels a day, about as much as Saudi Arabia. Iran's currency has lost 70% of its value against the US dollar over the past year. That's led to higher prices and food shortages. And the government admits it can't rely on oil alone to keep the economy afloat.
The Iranian government working very hard to free itself from the dependency to the oil exporting goods, okay?
But oil is still the backbone of Iran's economy. Crude sales represent 80% of its foreign currency income, and it pays for a public sector workforce that accounts for 5% of GDP. And unless it can find a way around US sanctions, Iran's revolutionary road will remain rocky. Paolo Montecillo, TRT World.
Well, let's get more on this now from TRT World's editor-at-large, Craig Copetas, who joins us live now from our bureau in Washington. Hi, Craig. Good to see you east side, even though it's probably a little chilly there. But as we heard in the story, 40 years on from the revolution, things were looking up when the historic nuclear deal was signed in 2015. How much has the Trump administration's withdrawal from the deal hurt Iran's economy?
Well, it slapped Iran around. This morning I was speaking to some representatives from the Pentagon's Warfare Analysis Lab, and what they're doing is the aggressive use of economic means to achieve the United States' national objectives, and that is to wipe out Iran. That's how they're doing it. Now, Oscar, we can come in with all kinds of statistics and inflation rates and all of that, but the best indicator to always look at in situations like this is the US dollar to Iranian rial black market rate. The official rate, $1 will buy you 42,105 rials. On the black market, that dollar will buy you more than 120,000 rials. That's the indicator, and when you're looking at the rial losing 70% of its value over the past 12 months, that black market rate is going to go higher.
Incredible. So is that the end game then in terms of Washington's aims? It just wants regime change essentially in Iran?
Well, that's it. There were many rhetorical barbs in Donald Trump's State of the Union message in 2002. Bush put Iran on his axis of evil list. It's still there in 2007. You may recall the late Senator John McCain taking a line from the old Regents song, Barbara Ann, went bomb, 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 bomb Iran. That is pretty much how the hawks at the White House and at the Pentagon are still looking at Iran. They're not using real bombs, but they're using the weaponization of the US dollar and the extraterritorial application of US law to undermine the Iranian economy.
We are seeing, though, that the rest of the world is doing all it can to salvage the nuclear deal. It's also making sure that much of the world can still do business with Iran. Is this enough to help prop up Iran's economy?
No, and what I'm hearing is if those backdoor deals get any traction, the U.S. is going to come down really hard. The Trump administration, I'm told, is looking at this in a two-prong view, you could say. There's Middle East volatility, and this is why Trump is standing by the Saudis, because the Saudis are against the Iranians. The Israelis are coming into this because they don't like Hezbollah, which the White House will tell you that Hezbollah is running the Lebanese government. So it's this whole Middle Eastern mix, and it's a mess, as everyone knows. But the Trump administration believes that if they can undercut the Iranian economy, the entire house of cards will come down in the country. And that's what they're saying, at least.
Interesting. The pictures that we're seeing of the celebrations on this anniversary, they really only tell one side of the story, don't they? Because we have seen growing protests against the government and the regime in Iran. Could this be the start of something bigger?
I doubt it, Oscar, for one reason. The military still controls the army, and more important, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. As long as they control the military, excuse me, the people of Iran are going to remain under the thumb of the mullahs. It seems insane, but that's the way it's going. In fact, one person this morning, oddly enough, was telling me they had just returned from the country. There had just been a raid on their apartment house, and all the satellite dishes were taken down. And this young woman told me, she said the thing that her family missed the most were Turkish soap operas. So even Turkish soap operas are getting hit in this whole mess.
Is there anything that the Iranians can do in order to appease the United States?
Well, that's a very good question, Oscar. At this point, it doesn't seem that way, particularly because there's no diplomatic infrastructure here in the United States at the White House right now to deal with Iran. You know, the director of the National Intelligence Service, Dan Coates here, was saying the other day that even though the intelligence community believes the Iranians are going along with this nuke deal, the White House, with hardliners like John Bolton and, of course, President Trump and others, they've let the whole diplomatic infrastructure one would usually use to have back-channel negotiations with the Iranians on these issues. They've just it's gone with Scarlett O'Hara's wind. Doesn't exist anymore. So we're told that there's really no way for the White House to have any official discussions with Iran because all the experts aren't there anymore.
In the meantime, ordinary Iranians are suffering the most, aren't they? Craig Copetas in Washington, thanks again.